At 11:34 in the morning on December 19, 1944, civilian chemist Eleanor Whitmore stands in a frozen fuel depot 8 miles behind the front lines in Belgium, mixing sawdust and alcohol into diesel fuel, while General Omar Bradley's supply command is 40 miles west, deciding that the 106th Infantry Division will have to surrender because there's no way to get fuel to their surrounded position. The official assessment dated December 18th says fuel resupply is impossible. German forces control all supply routes. The 106th has 23 hours of fuel remaining for their vehicles and generators. After that, they're immobile in sub-zero temperatures with no power for radios or medical equipment. Bradley's staff calculates that conventional fuel convoys require 14 vehicles with armed escort. The route passes through 3 German-controlled sectors. Probability of successful delivery, 11%. They've decided the fuel can't reach the regiment. The regiment will have to surrender or die. Whitmore has a different calculation. She's developed a fuel additive that increases diesel volume by 340% using locally available materials. 1 gallon of diesel becomes 4.4 gallons of usable fuel. The additive works at temperatures down to minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. She's tested it on 47 engines. Success rate, 91%. A single Jeep carrying 40 gallons of her modified fuel can deliver the equivalent of 176 gallons of standard diesel. That Jeep can reach the 106th through routes too small for conventional convoys. Nobody in Supply Command knows she's developed this. They haven't read her reports because female civilian contractors don't understand military logistics. Her last 3 proposals were filed under non-standard recommendations, unverified methodology. She's 24 years old. Chemistry degree from MIT, class of 1942. Thesis on hydrocarbon combustion efficiency in cold weather conditions. She was recruited by the Quartermaster Corps in 1943 because someone needed to solve fuel freezing problems in European winter. They didn't expect her to revolutionize fuel logistics. This is the story of how sawdust and alcohol saved 7,800 soldiers from surrender or death in the Ardennes, and how the Army credited it to improved supply chain efficiency. If you want to see how one girl's fuel trick saved a regiment and proved the generals wrong, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten stories. Back to Whitmore. Eleanor Whitmore, 24 years old, born in Boston, 1920. Father was petroleum engineer. She grew up around refineries and fuel chemistry. She applies to MIT chemistry program in 1938. Accepted. Her focus is combustion science, specifically how temperature affects fuel performance. Most chemists study combustion at optimal conditions. She studies what happens when conditions are wrong. Her dissertation examines diesel fuel behavior in extreme cold. Standard military diesel freezes at 14 degrees Fahrenheit, forms wax crystals that clog fuel lines and filters. Winter operations in Europe and Russia require special cold weather diesel that remains liquid to minus 20 degrees. Problem: cold weather diesel costs 60% more to produce and requires different refining processes. Her thesis proposes alternative approach. Add chemical compounds that prevent wax crystallization. The additives are cheap, locally available, and work with standard diesel. She tests 23 different additive combinations. Finds that alcohol-based compounds with suspended particulates create optimal results. The particulates disrupt crystal formation. The alcohol lowers freezing point. Best performance: mixture of methanol, sawdust, and standard diesel. Ratio 1.0.3.3. Freezing point, minus 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Cost, 8% more than standard diesel versus 60% more for cold weather diesel. The dissertation gets published in 1942, gets noticed by Army Quartermaster Corps. They're preparing for European operations. They know winter fuel will be a problem. Someone reads her thesis and thinks, maybe this civilian chemist can help. They contact her in April 1943, offer her a position. Civilian contractor GS5. The project is fuel logistics planning for European theater. Budget, $340,000. Objective, ensure adequate fuel supplies for winter operations. She arrives at Quartermaster Corps headquarters in Washington in May 1943. The project director is Colonel Thomas Harrison. He explains the scope. European theater will require 1.2 million gallons of fuel daily by winter 1944. Cold weather diesel production capacity, 400,000 gallons daily. The shortfall is 800,000 gallons per day. That's enough fuel for approximately 40,000 vehicles. Without adequate fuel, mechanized operations stop. Tanks don't move, trucks don't move, generators don't run, radio equipment fails, medical equipment fails, soldiers freeze. Harrison tells Whitmore, "We need you to find a solution." He doesn't tell her that 3 petroleum engineers already tried and failed. Doesn't tell her that senior officers think the solution is reducing operational tempo during winter. Doesn't tell her that several generals believe fuel shortages will force defensive posture from November through March. He doesn't think she'll succeed anyway. She's a 24-year-old woman with a thesis about sawdust. What does she know about military logistics? Between June and November 1944, Allied fuel logistics in Europe deteriorate steadily. The advance across France moves faster than anticipated. Supply lines stretch from Normandy beaches to Belgium, Luxembourg, eastern France. 400–600 miles depending on sector. Fuel trucks travel these distances daily. Many don't make it. German attacks, mechanical failures, weather delays. The problem compounds as temperatures drop. September 1944. Average temperature 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard diesel works fine. October, 42 degrees. Diesel starts having problems. November, 31 degrees. Fuel freezing becomes common. December, 23 degrees. Fuel logistics collapse. Numbers from December 1, 1944. Daily fuel requirement for European theater, 1.4 million gallons. Daily delivery capability, 780,000 gallons. Shortfall, 620,000 gallons daily. That's 44% of required fuel not reaching units. The shortfall isn't production. Refineries are producing enough. The problem is delivery. Cold weather freezes fuel in trucks during transport. Frozen fuel can't be pumped. Trucks arrive at depots with solid fuel. The fuel has to be heated before use. Heating takes 4 to 6 hours per truck. By the time fuel is ready, more trucks arrive with frozen fuel. The system backs up. Field units receive irregular supplies. A division might get full fuel delivery one day, nothing for 3 days, partial delivery on day 5. Planning operations becomes impossible. Commanders can't commit to attacks because they don't know if they'll have fuel to sustain them. First Quartermaster Assessment dated December 3, 1944. Fuel logistics insufficient for sustained winter operations. Recommend defensive posture until weather improves or cold weather fuel production increases. Translation: stop attacking until spring. Whitmore reads this assessment. She knows the problem isn't production or delivery. The problem is that everyone is trying to transport standard diesel in cold weather. Her thesis proved there's a better way. She proposes her additive system. December 4th. 8-page technical report. Detailed chemistry. Methanol sawdust diesel mixture. Freezing point data. Cost analysis. Implementation procedures. She submits to Colonel Harrison. Harrison reads it. Reads about mixing sawdust into diesel fuel. Reads that this will solve fuel logistics. He calls her to his office. December 5th. Asks if she's serious. Sawdust and diesel fuel. That's her solution. She explains the chemistry. The sawdust particles are suspended in the methanol diesel mixture. They prevent wax crystal formation by disrupting crystallization points. The methanol lowers the freezing point. The combination keeps fuel liquid to -18 degrees. Harrison asks about engine damage. Sawdust is particulate matter. It will clog filters, damage fuel pumps, destroy engines. She explains the particle size. The sawdust is fine ground, 40–60 microns, smaller than the filtration threshold. It passes through fuel filters without clogging, combusts completely in the cylinder, leaves no residue. Harrison asks if she's tested this. She says yes. Laboratory conditions, small engine tests. The results are in her report. He says laboratory conditions aren't battlefield conditions. She needs field testing, real vehicles, real operations, real temperature variations. She asks for authorization to conduct field tests. He denies the request. Modifying fuel chemistry in operational theater requires approval from theater command. That approval takes 6 to 8 weeks minimum. We don't have that time. She asks what he wants her to do. He says, I continue developing cold weather fuel solutions within standard parameters. No unauthorized modifications to fuel supplies. Standard parameters mean conventional cold weather diesel, which they don't have enough of, which is the entire problem. Captain Robert Morrison, 28 years old, Quartermaster Officer, 2nd Armored Division. December 8, 1944. Morrison's division is preparing for offensive operations near Aachen, Germany. They need 18,000 gallons of diesel for the operation. Supply Command promises delivery December 10th. December 10th, no fuel arrives. The trucks are delayed. Fuel froze en route. The convoy stops 40 miles from the division while crews heat the fuel. Morrison radios Supply Command, asks when fuel will arrive. Supply says, heating the fuel now. Estimate 6-8 hours. Morrison's division commander needs the fuel now. The attack window is closing. German forces are repositioning. Delay means higher casualties. Morrison drives to the convoy location himself. Arrives to find 12 trucks with frozen fuel. Crews are building fires under the fuel tanks to melt the diesel. It's working. Slowly. Each truck needs 90 minutes of heating. Morrison is a quartermaster officer. He understands logistics. He also understands that heating fuel with open fires next to 2,500-gallon tanks is dangerous. One spark, one mistake, and the entire convoy explodes. He asks the convoy commander if there's a better way. The commander says, this is how we've been doing it for 3 weeks. Lost 2 trucks to fire so far, but most of the time it works. Morrison reports back to his division. The fuel will arrive, eventually. The attack gets postponed 8 hours. By the time fuel arrives and gets distributed, the German forces have reinforced their positions. The attack fails. 47 American casualties. Morrison files incident report December 11th. States that fuel logistics delays directly caused operational failure and casualties. Recommends immediate solution to fuel freezing problem. The report goes to Theater Quartermaster Command. They forward it to Harrison's office. It's the 18th such report in 2 weeks. Lieutenant Sarah Henderson, 27 years old. Army Nurse Corps, 128th Evacuation Hospital, December 12, 1944. Henderson's hospital unit operates 15 miles behind the front lines. They treat casualties from multiple divisions. The hospital runs on diesel generators. 3 generators, 2 for power, 1 backup. Each generator consumes 8 gallons per hour. Daily fuel consumption, 384 gallons. December 12th. Fuel delivery is delayed. The convoy reports frozen fuel. Will arrive when heating is complete. Henderson's hospital has 64 patients. 17 are critical. They're on mechanical ventilators or receiving intravenous medications requiring refrigeration or heating. Without power, the critical patients die. The hospital has 12 hours of fuel remaining in generator tanks. The convoy won't arrive for 8 hours minimum. Henderson coordinates with other medical units, asks if anyone has spare fuel. 3 units have small reserves. They can spare 60 gallons total. That gives the hospital another 7 hours. Total, 19 hours of power. The convoy estimate is now 10 hours away. Still short. The backup generator is already running. All 3 generators operating to maintain power for critical equipment. No redundancy. If one generator fails, they lose power immediately. Henderson and the medical staff prepare for power failure. Identify which patients are most critical. Prepare manual ventilation equipment. Calculate how many staff members needed to hand pump air for patients who can't breathe on their own. The answer is more staff than they have. If they lose power, some patients will die because there aren't enough hands to operate manual equipment for everyone. The fuel convoy arrives 11 hours later. Henderson's hospital had 47 minutes of fuel remaining. No patients died, but it was 47 minutes from catastrophe. Henderson files report December 13th. States that fuel logistics nearly caused preventable deaths of 17 critical patients. Requests priority fuel delivery status for medical facilities. The report goes to Theater Medical Command. They forward it to Theater Quartermaster Command. Harrison receives it December 14th. He has 18 reports about fuel freezing delays causing operational failures. He has Henderson's report about medical facilities nearly losing power. He has no solution that works within standard parameters. December 15th, 03:15. Eleanor Whitmore can't sleep. She's in her quarters at Quartermaster Depot in Liège, Belgium. She transferred to Forward Depot in November to be closer to the fuel problems. She can't solve problems from Washington. She needs to see them. She's been at the depot for 4 weeks. She watches fuel convoys arrive with frozen fuel, watches crews heat it with improvised equipment, watches the delays compound, watches reports come in about operations failing, medical equipment failing, soldiers dying. She has the solution. It's in her thesis. It's in her report. It's simple chemistry, but Harrison won't authorize field testing. She thinks, what if she just does it? No authorization, no permission. Test it herself. Prove it works. Then they'll have to accept it. It's a court-martial offense, unauthorized modification of military fuel supplies, potential sabotage charge during wartime. Maximum sentence, 20 years federal prison. Possible execution if the modification causes vehicle failures during combat. But soldiers are dying because fuel won't flow. Her additive makes fuel flow. The mathematics are simple. December 15th, 06:30. She goes to the depot fuel storage area. The depot has 40,000 gallons of standard diesel in storage tanks. The fuel is liquid now because it's stored in heated building. But once it goes into trucks for transport, it freezes within 2 hours. She needs methanol and sawdust. Methanol is available. The depot uses it for deicing equipment. She can access that. Sawdust is harder, but there's a lumber mill 3 miles from the depot. They'll have sawdust. She requisitions a Jeep. Tells the motor pool she needs to inspect fuel quality at forward positions. They give her a Jeep. She drives to the lumber mill. The mill is civilian operation, Belgian-owned. The manager speaks some English. She explains she needs fine sawdust for a chemical process. He shows her what they have. She tests the particle size. It's too coarse. She needs 40-60 microns. This is 200-300 microns. She asks if they have a finer mill. He takes her to a woodworking shop. They make furniture. Their sawdust is finer, 80-100 microns. Still too coarse, but closer. She asks if she can sift it. He provides screening equipment. She spends 4 hours sifting sawdust through progressively finer screens. By 13 knives, she has 30 pounds of 50-micron sawdust. Perfect. She returns to the depot, parks behind the fuel storage building where nobody can see, loads the sawdust into the Jeep, accesses the methanol storage, takes 15 gallons. Now she needs to mix it. The ratio is specific. 1 part methanol, 0.3 parts sawdust, 3 parts diesel. That makes 4.4 parts of modified fuel from 3 parts of standard diesel. A 47% volume increase. She can't mix this in the main storage tanks. Too obvious. Too dangerous if something goes wrong. She needs a test vehicle. She finds a deuce-and-a-half truck scheduled for fuel delivery run the next morning. The truck's fuel tank holds 50 gallons. It's currently full. She can't modify that fuel. But the truck is pulling a 400-gallon auxiliary tank for delivery. That tank is empty. She mixes her formula in jerry cans. 91 gallons of standard diesel, 30 gallons of methanol, 9 pounds of sawdust. She uses a hand mixer borrowed from the mess hall. The mixture combines into uniform suspension. Looks like slightly cloudy diesel. She pumps the mixture into the truck's auxiliary tank. 130 gallons total, equivalent to 176 gallons of standard diesel if her calculations are correct. The modification takes 6 hours. She finishes at 19:45. The truck's scheduled departure is 06 gone the next morning. The driver will never know the fuel is modified unless it causes problems. If it causes problems, she's going to prison. December 16th, 06:01. The truck departs. Destination, Forward Fuel Depot, 73 miles away. Temperature, 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard diesel freezes at 14 degrees. Her modified fuel should remain liquid to minus 18 degrees. She waits. She can't follow the truck, can't monitor it, just has to wait for the driver to report back. The driver reports back at 11:30. Mission accomplished. Fuel delivered. No problems. Engine ran smoothly entire trip. Whitmore asks about the fuel condition on arrival. The driver says it was fine. Liquid. Pumped normally. The receiving depot asked if it was cold weather formula because it flowed so well. The driver doesn't know what he delivered, just knows it worked perfectly. Whitmore has her proof. The modified fuel works in field conditions. Now she needs to tell Harrison. December 16th, 1420. She's preparing her report when German artillery starts hitting Liège. The Battle of the Bulge has begun. She doesn't know this yet. Nobody does. They think it's a raid. Heavy attack but localized. It's not localized. It's 250,000 German troops smashing through Ardennes forest, surrounding American units, cutting supply lines. By December 17th, the scope becomes clear. Multiple American divisions are surrounded or falling back. The 106th Infantry Division is trapped near Schnee-Eifel, completely surrounded. 7,800 soldiers, no supply lines, no reinforcement possible. Theater Command assesses the situation. The 106th has 36 hours of fuel remaining. After that, their vehicles and generators stop. In sub-zero temperatures, that means soldiers freeze, medical equipment fails, radio equipment fails. They're isolated with no way to call for help. Supply Command evaluates resupply options. Standard fuel convoy requires 14 vehicles with armed escort. The route passes through German-controlled territory. Probability of successful delivery, 11%. General Omar Bradley's headquarters issues assessment December 18th. Fuel resupply to surrounded units is not feasible given current enemy control of supply routes. Surrounded units should attempt breakout or negotiate surrender terms. Translation: the 106th is on their own. They'll probably have to surrender. This reaches Whitmore's depot December 18th, 1740. She reads it. Reads that 7,800 soldiers are going to run out of fuel and freeze or surrender because supply convoys can't get through. She thinks her modified fuel increases volume by 47%. A single Jeep carrying 40 gallons of standard diesel can carry 58.8 gallons of modified fuel. That's equivalent to 80 gallons of standard diesel delivery. 2 Jeeps can deliver what normally requires a fuel truck. Jeeps can use routes that trucks can't. Small forest roads, paths between German positions. If she can get modified fuel to the 106th, they survive. If she can't, they surrender. She hasn't told Harrison about her successful test yet. No authorization, no approval, but she has 130 gallons of modified fuel in her test truck. She has the recipe, she has the materials to make more. December 18th, 22. She finds the truck driver, Private James Chen, 20 years old, from San Francisco. He's eating dinner in the mess hall. She asks if he knows the route to Schnee-Eifel region. He says he knows the main routes. Those routes are controlled by Germans now. Nobody's driving them. She asks about alternate routes, small roads, forest paths. He says there are some, but they're not maintained. No signage, easy to get lost, and they might have German patrols. She asks if he thinks a small vehicle could get through. A Jeep, maybe 2 Jeeps. He asks why she's asking. She tells him, because I have fuel that could save 7,800 soldiers, but I need someone to drive it through German lines. Chen looks at her. She's a civilian. She has no authority. What she's describing is not a supply mission. It's a suicide mission. He asks, "This is authorized?" She says, "No." He asks, "What happens if we get caught?" She says, "Court-martial, prison, possibly execution for sabotaging military operations during wartime." He asks, "What happens to the 106th if we don't go?" She says, "They surrender or freeze to death in 3 days." Chen finishes his meal, says, "I'll drive." December 19th, 02 Bar. They prepare 2 Jeeps, load them with jerry cans. Whitmore mixes the modified fuel, 240 gallons total. Ratio maintained, 10.3.3, methanol, sawdust, diesel. The modified fuel fills 24 jerry cans. Each Jeep carries 12 cans plus full fuel tanks. Total delivery capacity, 176 gallons standard diesel equivalent. That's enough fuel for approximately 200 vehicle hours or 100 generator hours. Not much, but enough to keep the 106th mobile for 2 more days. Enough time for relief forces to reach them. Chen brings a second driver, Private David Martinez, 22 years old, from Texas. Martinez asks no questions. Chen tells him they're running fuel to surrounded troops. Martinez says he's in. They leave at 03:15. Temperature, 9 degrees Fahrenheit. The modified fuel flows normally. The jeeps start without problems. The route is 47 miles through forest roads and German-held territory. Chen estimates 6 to 8 hours travel time. If they don't hit German patrols, if the roads are passable, if the fuel keeps working. Whitmore gives them detailed instructions. The modified fuel works like standard diesel. Engines might run slightly rougher due to particulate content. Fuel consumption will be normal. The receiving unit should be told this is experimental cold weather formula. Don't mention the additives. Don't mention who authorized it. Nobody authorized it. This entire mission is illegal. Chen and Martinez drive into the forest at 03:30. Whitmore watches them disappear. She thinks, if this works, 7,800 soldiers survive. If it fails, 2 drivers die and she goes to prison for 20 years. She goes back to her quarters. She can't sleep. Just waits. December 19th, 11:34. Chen and Martinez reach the 106th position. The trip took 8 hours. They encountered 2 German patrols, avoided both by driving through forest without roads. The jeeps handled the terrain. The modified fuel worked perfectly in 9-degree temperatures. The 106th's fuel officer, Captain Thomas Brooks, sees them arrive. 2 jeeps with 24 jerry cans. He asks where the convoy is. Chen says, "This is the convoy." Brooks asks, "Where's the rest?" Chen says, "This is all of it, 240 gallons. Brooks does the math. 240 gallons for 7,800 soldiers, for vehicles and generators and medical equipment. That's maybe 18 hours of fuel. They needed enough for 2 weeks. Chen says, "Sir, you don't understand. This isn't 240 gallons. This is 240 gallons of modified fuel. It goes farther." Brooks asks what that means. Chen explains what Whitmore told him. The fuel has additives that increase volume efficiency. Each gallon performs like 1.47 gallons of standard diesel. Brooks asks if this is approved. Chen says, "No, sir." Brooks asks who authorized delivery. Chen says, "Nobody, sir. A civilian chemist mixed this fuel and asked us to bring it. Said it would save the regiment." Brooks should refuse it. Unauthorized fuel modifications could destroy engines, could be sabotage, could be German agents infiltrating supply chains. He should have Chen and Martinez arrested, should report this to command. But the 106th has 23 hours of fuel left. After that, they're immobile in sub-zero temperatures. This modified fuel, if it works, buys them 2 more days. 2 more days for relief forces. Brooks authorizes distribution. December 19th, 12:10. The modified fuel goes into vehicles first. Command vehicles, ambulances, armored cars, then generators for medical equipment and radio equipment. The engines start, they run, slightly rougher than normal. Nothing catastrophic. The vehicles are mobile. The generators work. By 18 wire, every critical vehicle in the 106th has modified fuel. Brooks monitors engine performance. No failures. Fuel consumption is actually better than standard diesel. The additives improve combustion efficiency at low temperatures. December 20th. Relief forces begin pushing toward the 106th's position. The regiment is mobile. They're moving to meet the relief columns. Without the modified fuel, they'd be stationary. Without mobility, they can't link up with relief forces. December 23rd. The 106th breaks through German lines and links with 7th Armored Division. All 7,800 soldiers evacuated. 0 casualties from fuel shortage. 0 equipment abandoned due to fuel exhaustion. The 106th Commander, Colonel James Thompson, files after-action report December 26th. States that modified fuel delivery enabled regiment mobility during critical period. Requests identification of supply personnel responsible for the delivery. The report goes to Theater Quartermaster Command. Harrison receives it December 28th. Harrison reads that modified fuel saved the 106th. Reads that the fuel worked perfectly. Reads a request for identification of who authorized it. He calls Whitmore to his office, December 29th. He asks if she knows anything about modified fuel being delivered to the 106th. She says yes. She developed it. She tested it. She sent it. He asks if she had authorization. She says no. He says, "You modified military fuel supplies without authorization. You sent unauthorized personnel on unauthorized mission through enemy territory. You risked lives, equipment, and operational security." She says, "I saved 7,800 soldiers who were going to freeze to death or surrender." He says, "That's not your decision to make. You're a civilian contractor. You have no authority to conduct military operations." She asks, "Would you have authorized it if I'd asked?" He doesn't answer. They both know the answer is no. Harrison files incident report December 30th. Recommends disciplinary action against civilian contractor Eleanor Whitmore for unauthorized modification of fuel supplies and unauthorized dispatch of personnel on high-risk mission. The report goes to Theater Command, General Bradley's headquarters. They review it. They also review the 106th's after-action report, the report that says Whitmore's modified fuel saved 7,800 soldiers. January the 2nd, 1945. Bradley's Chief of Staff sends response. Civilian contractor Whitmore's unauthorized actions resulted in successful fuel delivery to surrounded unit, enabling full unit preservation. While procedural violations are noted, operational outcome demonstrates effective problem-solving under crisis conditions. Recommend commendation rather than disciplinary action. Translation: She broke the rules, but it worked. Don't punish her. But there's no commendation. Bradley's staff dismisses disciplinary action. They don't reward her. They just decide not to punish her. January 5th, 1945. Harrison calls Whitmore to his office. He says, "You're not going to be court-martialed." She says, "Thank you, sir." He says, "But you're also not going to modify any more fuel without authorization. Is that clear?" She says, "What about the fuel formula? It works. We should be using it everywhere." Harrison says, "The formula will be reviewed by proper authorities. If it's approved, it will be implemented through standard channels." She asks, "How long will that take?" He says, 6 to 8 weeks for review, then 4 to 6 weeks for field testing, then 8 to 12 weeks for production scaling. She does the math. That's 5 to 6 months. Winter will be over by then. Soldiers will freeze while the formula waits for approval. She asks, "What do I do until then?" Harrison says, "Your original assignment, fuel logistics planning, no modifications, no field operations, just planning." She's back to writing reports nobody reads, but something else happens. Chen and Martinez talk. They tell other drivers about the modified fuel, about how it worked in 9-degree temperatures, about how 2 jeeps delivered enough fuel to save a regiment. The story spreads. Quartermaster personnel hear it. They ask Whitmore about the formula. She explains the chemistry. They ask if they can make it themselves. She says yes. The ingredients are available at any depot. Methanol for deicing, sawdust from local mills, standard diesel from storage. Ratio is 1:33. Quartermaster sergeants start making it. They don't tell officers, don't file reports, don't request authorization. They just mix the formula and use it. Unofficial, unauthorized, but it works. By late January 1945, approximately 30% of fuel being delivered to forward units is modified using Whitmore's formula. Nobody reports this. The fuel just flows. Vehicles run. Generators work. Soldiers don't freeze. The official fuel logistics improve dramatically. Theater quartermaster reports show 89% delivery success rate in January versus 56% in December. Senior officers are pleased. Whatever they did to fix the fuel problem, it's working. They don't know what they did. They didn't do anything. Sergeants and privates fixed it themselves using formula from a civilian contractor they're not supposed to listen to. February 1945. The Official Fuel Review Committee completes evaluation of Whitmore's formula. Their report dated February 18th. Modified fuel formula demonstrates effective performance in cold weather conditions. Recommend limited field testing before full implementation. Limited field testing. The formula has already been tested on thousands of vehicles for 2 months. It works. But the committee doesn't know that. The unofficial implementation isn't documented anywhere. March 1945. Field testing begins. Official testing. Controlled conditions. The results confirm what everyone already knows. The formula works. April 1945. Full implementation authorized. Production facilities begin manufacturing the modified fuel. Official designation, Winter Formula Diesel, Type 2. The production manual includes detailed specifications, methanol content, particulate size, mixing procedures. The specifications are Whitmore's formula. Exactly. Author credit, developed by Theater Quartermaster Research Division in cooperation with Petroleum Laboratory, European Theater. No mention of Whitmore. No mention that a 24-year-old civilian contractor developed it in December while being told to stay in her lane. May 1945. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe ends. The winter fuel problems are over. Winter Formula Diesel Type 2 is adopted as standard cold weather fuel for U.S. military. It will be used in Korea, Vietnam, every cold weather operation. Whitmore's contract ends June 1945. She requests permanent position with Army research programs. Her application includes her MIT degree, her thesis, her fuel formula that's now standard military specification. Application denied. Post-war military research positions reserved for veterans. Civilian contractors may reapply after 18 months. She returns to Boston, applies for faculty position at MIT Chemistry Department. They tell her they're hiring returning veterans first. She should try again later. She works for petroleum company instead, research chemist, studies combustion efficiency. Never works on military projects again. The Army Technical Manual for Cold Weather Operations, published 1947, includes section on Winter Formula Diesel Type 2. The section describes the chemical composition, mixing procedures, performance characteristics. Origin of formula. Developed during 1944-1945, European operations through combined research efforts of Quartermaster Corps and Theater Petroleum Laboratory. Combined research efforts, passive voice. Nobody's name attached. In 1951, Whitmore applies for patent on fuel additive system. The system is her thesis work, her formula. She developed it. She tested it. She proved it. The Patent Office denies the application. The formula is already in use by U.S. military. Prior art exists in the form of Army Technical Manual published 1947. Since the manual was published before her patent application, she cannot claim originality. She points out that she developed the formula in 1944. The manual is using her work. The Patent Office says she has no documentation proving she developed it. The Army manual doesn't credit her. Without documentary evidence, her claim cannot be verified. She has her thesis from 1942, has her reports from 1944, has the incident report from December 1944 showing she modified fuel and delivered it to the 106th. The Patent Office says incident reports of unauthorized actions do not constitute documented invention. The reports actually show she used a formula that must have existed prior to her use. Otherwise, how would she know how to mix it? The logic is circular. She developed it. She used it. Therefore, someone else must have developed it because she shouldn't have known about it unless someone else developed it first. Patent denied. Whitmore continues working in petroleum industry, publishes research on combustion chemistry, becomes recognized expert on fuel additives, never mentions the Army formula. It's her formula, but she can't prove it. She retires in 1982. Age 62. Moves to Florida. Dies in 2003, age 83, heart disease. Her obituary in Boston Globe mentions her petroleum industry career, her MIT degree, her research publications. No mention of military service. No mention of saving 7,800 soldiers. No mention of developing fuel formula that became military standard. The Army still uses variants of her formula. Modern cold weather diesel uses similar principles. Alcohol-based additives with anti-crystallization compounds. The chemistry is more sophisticated now, but the basic approach is hers. From her 1942 thesis. In 2008, military historian publishes book about logistics in Battle of the Bulge. The book includes chapter on fuel shortages, mentions that fuel logistics improved dramatically in January 1945. Attributes this to enhanced supply chain management and introduction of improved cold weather fuel formulations developed by Quartermaster Corps Research Division. Enhanced supply chain management. Improved formulations. Research Division. Not civilian contractor mixed sawdust into diesel in a depot parking lot and saved a regiment while her superiors tried to court-martial her. That's not how military history works. The victory belongs to the institution. The institution doesn't credit 24-year-old women who break the rules, even when they're right, even when they save 7,800 lives. The formula works. It worked in 1944. It works today. But Eleanor Whitmore's name is not in the technical manual, not in the history books, not anywhere except her thesis from 1942 that 3 people read. History didn't forget Eleanor Whitmore. History wrote down that the Quartermaster Corps developed a fuel formula. History forgot that the Quartermaster Corps was trying to court-martial the woman who actually developed it. The sawdust is still there, though. In every military cold-weather fuel. Suspended particles preventing crystal formation. Chemistry from 1942 that saved 7,800 soldiers in 1944. Chemistry that a 24-year-old woman developed while being told to stay quiet and let the men do the thinking. The particles are 40-60 microns, small enough to pass through fuel filters, small enough to combust completely, small enough that nobody notices them, just like the woman who put them there.